Wesley Perkins and Jonas Clark. So, fellas, we're going to be talking about a Spurs loss to the Denver Nuggets. Dun dun dun. We knew it was going to happen. If the Spurs had won against the Nuggets, I would have been extremely surprised. But my predictions are holding up. Unfortunately, I wish they were not. This one was a game that the Spurs just let get away. Um, I'd say right around the three minute mark of the fourth quarter. At the 2 minute mark, you kind of knew that the wheels already started coming off. Um, and it's unfortunate because the Spurs had battled back, you know, and they got themselves back into this game. And they were down by as many as 12 points in the first quarter to start off the game. The bench just looked abysmal. You know, the starters didn't look like they could get anything going, and they fought back. So you got to commend them on that. You know, final score 132 to 126. I doubt if this changes the standings at all as far as the Spurs go. I'm interested to see what's going to happen after some of the other teams play tonight. Right now, as it currently stands, the Spurs are 10th in the Western Conference. The Grizzlies did lose, which helped us, you know. Unfortunately, it doesn't really do anything for us because we didn't win, so we couldn't make any headway. We started, let's say, this game 1.5 games away or behind the Portland Trailblazers. So we would have won tonight. We would only been a game away from the Trailblazers. So that didn't help our cause. Right now, I believe we're going to be tied with the Pelicans for the 11th seed out west. And we actually are going to be playing the Pelicans soon enough here. I got to tell you, man, I did like the play of Derek White, though. Me and Jonas. Jonas is, by the way, here in studio with me, but we're practicing social distancing. So he's in another part of the studio, and I'm in the control room. He was watching the game over there, and I was watching the game over here. Hey, what's up, James Hernandez, Frank Ramirez, and Frank Guevara? Thank you guys for watching us. We appreciate you. So give me your insight. It was nice to see Derek White going out there and drawing more charges. Me and Jonas were laughing and we're ecstatic because the guy just has he's like an art form, dude. Just watching him out there draw charges, I could watch highlight of that all day. Highlights of Derek White drawing charges on guys. Wesley, what did you see in tonight's game? And actually, Christopher Summers has a question for you. Honestly, why does anyone want the Spurs in the playoffs? Do you want the Spurs in the playoffs, Wesley?
Yeah, I mean, because listen, I'm not all about historical nostalgia and all that, but to see the Spurs franchise, as they are, we have a proud standard of what we expect out of our basketball team, and we know that obviously this year's team wasn't quite up to par in what we've seen and what we know, but yeah, absolutely. I don't think you ever want to turn down the playoffs. You never know what could happen. Look what happened in 1994 when the Denver Nuggets, snuck in as an 8 seed, and all of a sudden they're taking down the Seattle Supersonics. I mean, anything's possible. You got to get in the dance. And yeah, I'd never not want, especially at this point, what's the point of not wanting the playoffs? Because the actual seeds for what your draft picks are not going to change. The lottery is not going to change based off of anything. So this is a win-win. It's nothing but gravy from here in terms of just trying to, you're trying to get into the playoffs. You're giving these young kids some good experience. And if you get into the playoffs now, game by game, you're having to feel that level of intensity rise. It's less about, and I think Spurs fans miss the boat on this a lot when they talk about they don't wish to see the team in the playoffs. Or they're not going to do anything. It's like, man, I'm going to steal Chris Duell's statement. Get off my lawn. There's no way in any kind of standing you would ever want to see this team miss the playoffs. That's more preparation. That's better times of actual game experience that you're giving your team as a whole, and especially the younger players. And as we see right now, this is an exciting brand of basketball the Spurs are playing. No, it's not perfect. No, they get gashed up down the middle of the floor. We saw that tonight. It's that kind of transitions to what I was going to say about tonight. There are moments when the Spurs, if they had another gear, would be able to run away with some of these games. When they went up 9 in the third quarter, it was an easy just up and down the court. They're scoring at will. They're getting those passes. Again, the guys on the telecast were talking about assists and how well they were sharing the ball. And it was easy. But what we've seen sometimes out of the Spurs, and this is something worth noting, and it's where the Spurs of the years that we've known with the Duncans and all the big three, anytime they'd come out of timeouts, they were ready to go. For whatever reason, the Spurs, a lot of times when there's in a big lead situation, their momentum gets stymied and they end up losing all that momentum and giving it all right back. And that's what we saw. And to me, I know going into the fourth quarter, we all knew it was going to be an exciting finish. But a lot of times when the Spurs give up those kind of leads going into the fourth, you basically given away the one chance that you really had to pull that one out. I thought they really needed to go into the quarter or the fourth quarter with at least a 5 or 6 point lead, force the Nuggets to play a little bit more tense basketball. But what you saw was a Denver Nuggets team, hats off to them, that just played with ease. I mean, that's the best way you can put it. In the fourth quarter, if you're watching all of those guys, Porter is a stud. That kid is going to be something special. He's going to be an all-star in this league. He is somebody whose stroke just is real. He can do anything he wants on that court. Jokic just sees things that nobody else can see. He only had 4 rebounds tonight. If you would have told me that you hold him to 4 rebounds, keep him off the boards, and he has only 4 rebounds, you have a pretty good chance to win. But he had 11 assists to go along with 25 points. And the fact that he's getting Dozier 12 points here and there, and you're getting more out of Monte Mack and others who, if you're going to win, if you're going to beat the Denver Nuggets, you can't give up those points to those players. You have to hold them down. Because, again, I really felt, and I'm going to stand by what I said the other night, I felt the Spurs were going to win this game because I saw that what the Nuggets had not on the court for them was just as significant as what the Spurs were missing for them as well. When you're missing a Murray, you're missing a Gary Harris, and those guys are huge. But what I didn't discount was the fact that Porter could have another monster game like he did tonight, and he was the dominating factor along with Jeremy Grant. Give them a lot of credit. The Nuggets deserve to win this game. I thought the Spurs played a pretty darn good game overall, but it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't enough. And it's the issue that the Spurs have with big men specifically. When they had Embiid, they had issues. Now you have the Joker, where the Joker is a good passer as well. Big man, sees the court really well, has a knack for passing. He has a high basketball IQ. Can't say enough good things about Nikola Jokic. And not only that, but the guy came and cut. He dropped a ton of weight. He's in game shape, so that helps his cause all that much more. But the Spurs are just having issues with big men inside the paint. That it is what it is. We're not a very large team right now. We're missing some of our pivotal pieces in, Trey Lyles and LaMarcus Aldridge. I know people are always harping on LaMarcus Aldridge, and they hate his game and that he's just so slow out there. But he does some things at times that do help the Spurs. While the Spurs have looked like a much, I guess, more youthful team out there as far as them being able to get up and down the court, being able to do, all the exciting things that fans have been clamoring for all season. We saw some of that today. Keldon was aggressive going to the rim. So was Derek. Derek was balling. We saw some threes. We saw Lonnie Walker hit a 3. We saw great play, I thought, out of DeJounte Murray as well. And you also saw Drew Eubanks come up big again, in this game. So that was surprising. It's like, should I be rescinding my Drew Eubanks slander and my hatred towards him? As far as criticizing his game, I'm like, he's starting to make me want to take back my words, Wesley and Jonas. I got to say, but Jonas, what were the things that you saw out of tonight's game that you want to bring to light to Spurs fans?
Well, I think that one of the biggest things to look at coming out of tonight's game is just, again, the lack of play from the young guys. That's my biggest issue, is that we need to have more going on with our youth movement. That's my biggest problem right now, because it just doesn't help to lose games like this, and it happens with the veterans out there. What do you gain from that coming down the stretch? And that's the big problem. Everything else, I mean, it all looks good. The young guys are kind of slow to start. They definitely wake up in the second half, but as we start to put more of those guys on that starting rotation, you can't have a 12-point or a 9-point swing, a 12-point swing, anything like that early in a game, and then you end up finding yourselves in a position where you're relying on your bench, you're relying on your veterans, and then the picture isn't coming together. Look, I didn't come in tonight looking for a win. I know I took a little bit of heat for that the other night, in terms of my prediction that we would not win tonight. But the reasons why we lost, I think we're seeing out there. We were just too small. Jokic, and I even tweeted out, Jokic, we held him to 7 points at half, which was huge, and 1 rebound. But he still moved the ball well with 6 assists. But that's a key reason as to why you had the lead. We were doing better from the free throw line, and winning that battle, and even from deep 3-point range, we were winning that battle as well at halftime. But it's they're a more experienced club, and I understand that they're a young team too, but they've got that experience, and they're making playoff pushes year after year. When we ran into them last year, they showed us who the better team was. It was not we could have won that series, in 2019. We could have, but were we supposed to? No. And so that's what made it a little bit bittersweet. And that's kind of what made last night a bittersweet loss. And even tonight, is you find yourself in a position down the stretch to separate and win this game, and then you end up losing anyway. So it's not that, they always say win the games you're supposed to win. We weren't supposed to win tonight. Tonight would have been gravy. We went up against a better team. The last 2 nights, we've been predicted the underdogs, and the underdog didn't win.
Yeah, unfortunately, San Antonio Spurs were the underdog going into this game, and they didn't win, but I thought they showed great composure after, like I said, being down by 12, come all the way back in, even to get the lead at one point in time. Just unfortunate that they couldn't close out the Denver Nuggets. I think they got away from the little things that were working for them so nicely throughout the first, second, third quarter, even going into the fourth quarter. It just seemed like they got a little bit too complacent. They just missed some defensive assignments. They got a little bit sloppy. And when you make mistakes like that, and you're in a heated contest against a better opponent, those mistakes are going to cost you. And I felt that was really what happened in this game. They made too many mistakes, and the Denver Nuggets capitalized on those mistakes because, let's face it, they're the better team, when it comes to experience as well. The one thing that we have to get used to is while we have a great young core out there, they're inexperienced. They're going to make a lot of mistakes. And unfortunately, this is part of the growing pains. I think Jonas has been vocal about that as well, and you have as well, Wesley. So Spurs fans are just gonna have to get used to it. But it brings up the question, and I was talking with Jonas before we went on. If the Spurs, in fact, do lose one more game, that's going to be 3 games already that they've lost, 3 losses. That's pretty much solidifying your chances for the playoffs to nil. Even if because really you have to either go 6-2, or you have to go 5-3 to have a shot, and you're going to have a lot of help with some of the other teams that are in front of you. If they lose one more game, it doesn't look good for them. So should the Spurs look towards, like they said, development over winning? At that point, do you just toss in the young bucks and just have the veterans sit and just give the young guys experience out there? And if they win, they win. But if they can remain competitive and it's a close game against a better opponent and they're able to hold their own, that tells you a lot about this young core, that in fact the development has worked quite well. So I'm going to ask you that question first, Wesley. If they lose one more game, should they just pull the vets and just play the young bucks?
Not yet. And I think the logic is there to do it. But if Memphis is going to continue to give you games, and what's going to end up happening is Portland's going to end up moving up into that 8th slot. You're going to end up with Memphis giving games back. And, the Spurs and Memphis really could be still in a battle for that 9th slot. And everybody's so bunched up. The word bottleneck was used to describe it earlier today. It is. It's still so bottlenecked up. I think the chances of them getting ahead of Portland become slim, as each game goes by. But let's not forget, Portland has a daunting schedule. They got the Clippers coming up. They've got some teams that they've got to get past. And I think you play until you know that you're not in a position to play. Now, to Jonas's point, that he's been saying for the last 2 or 3 games, I don't have a problem with them playing the rosters as they see fit if it's the best way to win. However, to Jonas's point, that's not what Popovich had told us that was going to happen. His mindset, and if you watch the first two games, and what I thought really made the team so successful, you watched DeMar DeRozan have like 2 points in the first half. You watched him have 4 points in the first half in the second game, and then the young guys are in it. They're flowing. They're moving the ball. It's fun to watch. And granted, I realize the quality of opponent has jumped up a bunch, but still, you see glimpses of that, and then it goes back down to bogged down basketball. So what I wonder aloud, Joe and Jonas, is not whether or not they should pull the plug on it, but whether or not they should just look at what style of basketball has served them the best in this bubble that they've been since they've been playing. Go look at the film. What's the best thing that you see from this team, and when is that happening? It's a lineup that includes DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, with a Pirtle or with a Eubanks on the floor at times. Now, that's not to say you should sit down DeMar. That's not to say that you shouldn't play Rudy or Patty. It's just to say that maybe, and I think Jonas had pointed this out one of the games prior, that you have some time in that first half to kind of see what they can do. And if it's not going your way, okay, cool. In the second half, you make some adjustments. But I think they can still accomplish both of those things. And I'm a bit of an eternal optimist. I don't think that the Spurs are in as dire straits as we look at it. Because, again, they're basically, they have one less loss than Portland, although Portland's ahead of them in standings. Memphis is just, like I said, they're giving games back. The Spurs, I think we all realize that they've got to win. That's all there is to it. If they don't, like you said, Joe, if they go and lose the next two games, I think after the next two, then maybe I'm inclined to say, do you need to do that? But I'd say, if they go 4-4, there's still the outside possibility to make the playoffs with this team. You play the roster in the best way that you see fit. But I think we're all starting to see that maybe that the best way that you see fit has to include more of those guys. Look at Keldon Johnson tonight, 20 points. 20 points for Keldon Johnson tonight. Look at his aggression. Look at him going to the basket. And again, guys, what we saw tonight, if you really want to go to that game tape, is when the Spurs were at their best, they were getting to the rim. And they got there with ease. And at times, they gave the Nuggets too much respect inside and didn't score around the rim when they should have. So that's, again, youth mistakes, but that's what you got to do. You got to get your youth in that position and let them know, hey, get to the basket, go to score. And even if it means that you pull DeRozan out for a quarter or Rudy Gay out for a quarter and you don't see those guys, it's only going to serve to be, if you're in the game, to have those guys in there late. That's my point.
Yeah. And what about you, Jonas? You had said, that take before we went on air. If they lose one more game, do you want to see them pull the vets and just play the young bucks, or how do you think they should proceed?
I think it's time to make that switch now. You're 2-2. You make a lot of great points, Wesley, about the schedule for our opposition moving forward in terms of Memphis, who, like you said, are giving back games in a sense, and Portland, who has a daunting, gauntlet of a schedule down the stretch. But you also still have an intriguing team in New Orleans, right? And we still have a one-on-one matchup against them. But this next game specifically, I want to say we have the Jazz next. I could be wrong. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but it looks like a guess, Wesley, that we do in fact have the Jazz next. And it's just time to start testing these guys, because that's what this whole when I bought into the team development movement for Orlando, right, and that we weren't going to go after. This was not about making a playoff push. This was not about winning. It was about getting the guys ready. That already set my sights towards 2021, when we hopefully have an NBA resumption. The start of a new season, just before the new year. Fingers crossed, Christmas holiday on a really short off season. But that's where I set my sights then, to see this 8-game investment start to really become fruitful for the Spurs then. This is time to, like, Pop likes tinkering with lineups and rotations. We know this. This is time for Pop to tinker, and he hasn't had an opportunity before to be able to tinker with a Quindary next to a DeMar DeRozan and a Chemezi and a Pirtle down in the paint. And hell, go ahead and try the Chemezi and Eubanks at the NBA level. It works in Austin. It's going to be small here because they're both 6'9" guys, but give it a try because there's I think I counted 6 or 7 free agents this offseason. And about 3 or 4 of them are really, really young. In terms of Quindary, free agent. We have first rights to him, but he was only on a 1-year, two-way contract. So you've got to figure out, do you want to make that investment in him and what kind of level? Because he showed at the G League level, having watched, focused on Austin last year, he showed that he has the skills that some other team is willing to come in and offer him an NBA contract for. So are the Spurs willing to do that? You've got your Drew Eubanks, again, another guy who his contract is up, and he's definitely playing his way into some money, whether that's with the Spurs organization or, again, moving elsewhere. Bryn Forbes, I know you guys don't care for the guy. I consider him part of the youth movement still. He's hurt right now, so there's a reason why he's not getting minutes. But that's another guy he's a free agent this offseason. So you've got to start seeing down the stretch how he fits into the puzzle. To go back to the article that I wrote for Project Spurs, how he fits into that puzzle. And specifically rotations on offense and defense, because he's not the best defender, but if you can put him out there and rely on DeJounte, a Lonnie, a Keldon, a Derek to be able to provide some help defense around him, then you get to gain on the offensive side with the three-point production he can bring you, and hopefully do a little bit more to mask what he lacks on the defensive side. So that's what this time was supposed to be, and I bought that. I bought team development. It's not about 23 consecutive years for the Spurs in the playoffs. It's about giving these young guys some run, and that's not what we've gotten. So I'd like to go ahead and start seeing that come down against the Jazz, because you got another top flight team in the Jazz. Let's see how they match up. Let's see how a Drew Eubanks can continue to handle Rudy Gobert now. He's shown that he could do well against Embiid. He's shown that he could do well against the Joker. And to be honest, guys, he's my favorite player, but Jakob Poeltl hasn't. Even at 7'1", standing 4 inches taller than Drew Eubanks, Jakob looks like he gets out-muscled, where Drew almost looks a little bit more crafty. Maybe it's because he is undersized and he knows and he recognizes that he has to worm his way in. But you look from the dunk last night that lots of people wanted him to take. There was another opportunity for a dunk earlier that Jakob did not want to take tonight. He decided to go off the backboard. It worked, but you want to see him use his size. I think he forgets that he's a giant out there on the court at times. So that's why. In conclusion, that's why you move forward with these young guys. You know what you've got in DeMar, you know what you've got in Rudy, and we've seen them go off. And we appreciate their efforts. But to lose and see Quindary Weatherspoon finish with, I'm going to say, again, I don't have minutes in front of me, guys, but close to 10 minutes, and that might even be overshooting it. Look at the matchups as to how often we got to see Lonnie out there on the court with DeJounte and Derek, because we really think that's supposed to be a core part of a new three, or even Keldon out there with the DeJounte and Derek and Lonnie. And let's see these runs. That's what I'm here for. That's why I'm watching Orlando basketball, is I'm here for the youth movement.
Let me ask you this, Jonas, real quick. Kind of to your point about Poeltl. I think Eubanks is playing like there's no pressure on his shoulders, and he's playing a game that you've seen him do in Austin, where he's got a really good jump hook. Most people don't realize that. He's good around the rim. He's a shot blocker. He plays pretty sound positional defense. I feel like Poeltl, especially after the first 2 wins, just looks like he's pressing a lot, like he's just maybe not comfortable or is expecting too much out of him. I don't know. It seems like there's things going on in his head right now. What do you think about that?
Well, it could be that, and maybe that's why we're not seeing. Maybe that's why we haven't seen Jakob in the starting role before. Maybe just the title of being named a starter is a little bit too much for him, to kind of embrace. And he lets that get, he sets his expectations for being a starter too high, maybe. But Drew is playing with house money. He's a G League product. He went undrafted, and he has this opportunity to shine and show himself in Orlando with LMA and with Trey Lyles already out. He's not the starter. Many people you can go around the table and around San Antonio and find a lot of people who had kind of written Drew Eubanks off. I wrote a piece on him for Project Spurs back in February, and I said that, he's a great player and he's going to find a fit somewhere. But I just didn't think that with the size in front of him, and other guys that stands kind of 6'9", his limited skill set didn't give me what I wanted. But he's definitely surpassed Trey Lyles, or not Trey Lyles, but Chimezi, who also stands 6'9". He's approaching Trey Lyles, to be honest, just for what he brings, the grit, the grind, the hustle. Those things you can't coach. A player has that or they don't. And for Drew Eubanks, having come from, undrafted out of Oregon State and, getting a two-way contract with the Spurs, seeing limited action coming back and forth, he's playing with house money. Jakob Poeltl, on the other hand, he came out, he made a statement. He said, he told the Austrian press news or whatever that he was thinking about his offseason, his free agency. He wants to play it. He doesn't think that he's a good fit. And there's got to be a financial side to that too. So now this is either showing and highlighting that he doesn't fit with the Spurs, but there's other fan bases then that listen to that and they're like, oh, well, we might use a 7'1" guy, to kind of eat up the paint, block a Poeltl, okay, defensive minded, okay. And then you see his performance in Orlando, and I understand you can advance stat me to death about how the offense is so much better and the defense is so much better when Jakob Poeltl's out there. But the matter of the fact is that when the ball is in his hands, which it needs to be, whether it's coming down, he doesn't rebound well, he doesn't shoot well, and he forgets his size and his strength oftentimes. And so it's those moments that I'm sure I can go find another intellectual big man that's going to help set screens and clear the lane or whatever like that. But specifically on a pick and roll, I can't swing that back out to Jakob because Jakob can't make that shot. So what? I'm at a loss for words at that point. So Jakob, he's betting on himself, and he might be losing money right now, especially if he was hoping to come back with the Spurs. But Drew Eubanks, he's playing with house money. Then you can see that he has no weight, like you said, Wesley, he has no weight on his shoulders.
Yeah, we also have a comment here from Toddy Gods joining us from YouTube. He's stating here, Yak, at the start of the bubble, interviewed about his future and talked about more minutes. He needs to show me he is more of a blocker or defender. If he be the starting center, he needs his chance now, show more. And I agree. He does need to show more. If that's what he really wants to do, you want to be the starter, you got to show us more beyond, what you can do out there as far as, okay, I can set a great pick, or I can go ahead and set a great screen. I can pass the ball. I'm pretty good in the open court situations, in transition with everybody else. But beyond that, if you can't hit a free throw consistently when you get fouled, you become a liability at that juncture, especially at the end of the fourth quarter. If things are hot and heavy there, you can't be on the floor because they're going to foul you, because more than likely you're going to make one of two or you're going to miss them both. At that point, you're a liability. There's aspects of his game that he needs to work on. The only way I see the Spurs actually holding on to Jakob Poeltl is if he comes at a discount. There's things that he needs to work on in his game. Sure, other teams can go ahead and throw more money at you, but if you want to develop your game and flourish into a really well-rounded player, San Antonio is your destination. If you're going to go for the cash, you're going to go somewhere else, and you're always going to be this type of player. You're never going to evolve beyond it, and it's always going to delegate you to sitting on the bench, coming out, playing, garbage time minutes, always playing second or third fiddle to somebody else. That's better than you because they've worked on the other aspects of the game that he's not been working on. So I can only
Right,
see
and
him here at a discount, Jonas. Beyond that, like you said, he's not worth the 20 mil a year as far as a center.
right, and especially if you look at the competition that we're gauging him against. We're gauging him against Valanciunas, right? Who we're contending with for a playoff spot. We're gauging him against Nikola Jokic, who we're going to be contending with in the West for playoff spots. Not necessarily this year, but as the Spurs team develops, you want to be able to see Jakob be able to handle, at least do a better job. And I mentioned, I think it was 2 nights ago now, when the Sixers game was. My days are all running together. I can't remember what day it is. But when we had the Sixers, and we were coming out of that game, and we were previewing tonight, and I said one of the biggest things for Jakob too is going to be when Joker starts to step out on the perimeter, right? Or switch, and Jakob ends up on the perimeter guy, and you can't take him out of the paint because you need him down there for the rebounds or whatever, and he's not quite fast enough or athletic enough to be able to step out and then pivot back his foot to get back on defense quick enough. We're going to see him go up against a Rudy Gobert next, who is, again, another big man in the West, another starting center that we're going to have to contend with for a playoff spot. So if you can't perform, I mean, it's great. Again, all the other small things is great. But if you want to be a starting center in the West for a playoff contending team that we're trying to be, then you've got to do that extra. And you can't get outshined and outperformed drastically by some of these other big men who make you look small. Valanciunas dunked over Pirtle. Joker has no problem shooting right over Pirtle or rebounding. There was that awful rebounding sequence where Joker went up for the ball, and Pirtle's down just in front of him, and everybody's bouncing around 5, 6, 7 times, and Jakob can't come down with that. He even has position. He just has to body Joker out of there and grab that board, but he forgets how big he is. And that's a starting center on this team right now. That doesn't work moving forward if you want paid. So, Joe, you're right. If it comes at a discount, but there's even a question of, I mean, is there even a fit moving forward? Is that a puzzle piece moving forward? Then maybe it's just time to not, because we talk about as Spurs fans, we've seen enough money wasted over the last decade. We've seen massive contracts, or even not even necessarily massive contracts, but just 16, 14, 13 million dollars go to some of these mid-tier level guys that end up letting us down in the end. And you're just like, wow, well, if we have the extra 13 mil, who could we package that with and spend, to bring X free agent in town?
That's Jakob fits
I don't want
the mold of. No, go ahead, Jonas.
Well, I don't want to beat down on Jakob too much, because this game it's a lot more than just him. We've gotten eaten alive by big men, but we've also gotten eaten alive by guards too. And some of that comes down to the slow starts. Just for DeJounte and Derek, they start a little cold in the first half. They kind of find it in the second half. But there's a couple different problems going on with this team right now, and I mentioned growing pains, but this isn't even growing pain, because it's happening with your veterans out there. Like, if I'm gonna go through it, let me go through it. Like, if you're trying to rehab a broken bone or something, you just gotta work through it. Don't take the 6 extra Vicodin. That's what DeMar and Rudy Gay are right now. They're like a Vicodin when you're trying to rehab a broken bone, and you're trying to get better. You're trying to get stronger. Well, the only way you're gonna get stronger is to lean on that weak leg a little bit more. And so you got to lean on those young guys. And Rudy and DeMar get our hopes up about, playoff push. Oh, we're going to win this game. But there's only so much they can do. we're a little broken right now. We have the pieces. Again, check out my piece, Project Spurs. It's on top of my profile on my Twitter page at Jar Clonus. Check it out because you have to lean on these guys. These guys are the future. It's not about re-signing DeMar. It's not even so much about re-signing Jakob Poeltl. It's about those younger guys. Let yourself feel the struggle of watching them grow. It's not easy, but it pays off a lot more in the long run, and the losses are a lot easier to swallow. When you can look back and say, yeah, but Quinn put up 20 points in 30 minutes tonight. That was a good night. I'd rather be talking about that after tonight with a loss. That's what I'm focusing on then, as opposed to we collapsed.
Now, let me
No,
throw this
I
out at
I
you,
understand you
guys.
guys.
With Pirtle, I feel like if you look at the lineage of Spurs big men over the years, even when the big three was there was always that guy, right? There was that guy that was kind of the specialist, that was the shot blocker, the rebounder. You had Splitter, you had Nesterovic, you had Elson, you had, I mean, gosh, you could go up and down the row and talk about who was there to complement. And the fact of the matter is that without LaMarcus Aldridge out there, the one thing that does go awry is it kind of shines that, as we're talking about, that Pirtle's game is very limited. You're talking about those other centers that we're noticing. One of the big things that you see is tonight was a great example. Think of Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant was given up upon in OKC. He was not somebody that they valued much. They didn't see a future with him. He wasn't getting the touches. Look at what Jeremy Grant did tonight. Look at what he's become. Look at his shot. Look at what he's developed. And I think that's when you look at somebody like Pirtle and say, the market's not there for that big man who just has a big body. You look even at a guy like Marc Gasol, who at the very end of his career was developing a 3-point shot to sit out there, and knock down shots and spread the floor when it's needed. And that's where you have to say, while I love Pirtle as a person and as a competitor, I love his fire and what he brings on a nightly basis. He's just maybe not the right fit for what is needed in the Spurs organization at that position right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm going to go ahead and say, some shout outs here. Shout out to you, Christopher, Christopher Sanchez, and Frank Ramirez. Tim Rodriguez also joining us from YouTube. Shout out to Paul Garcia, who's joining us also from YouTube. Jason Salinas, who's joining us as well on Facebook. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening and watching us, ramble on here about the San Antonio Spurs and their loss. I'm going to go ahead and read off some of the stats of the night, of the game, should I say. That way you all can kind of know exactly what happened during this game. Field goal percentage, Denver Nuggets, they shot 50 of 91, good enough for 54.9% on the night. San Antonio shot 46 of 93, good enough for 49.5% during this game. Rebounds, rebounding edge, it went to Denver. Not to Denver. Well, it did go to Denver by a few. Denver beat us 46 to San Antonio's 35 rebounds. Turnovers, Denver had 14, San Antonio had 7. Fouls, Denver had 21, San Antonio had 20. Three-point field goal percentage. Spurs shot 36.7 on the night. Denver 38.9. So neither team shot well from beyond the arc. Free throw shooting percentage. Denver beat us by a few percentage points. San Antonio was 85.2% from the stripe. Denver 85.7. The assist, edge goes to Denver, 31 to San Antonio's 29. Steals, we had 10 steals. Denver had 6, which shows that we were very active on the defensive end. Blocks, San Antonio had 5, so did Denver. It was a dead even tie. Points in the paint, Jonas. You would think Denver was going to dominate us. Points in the paint. Tonight it was dead even, 56 to 56. Fast break points. Spurs had the edge over the Nuggets, 13 to 5. Bench points. The Spurs bench outscored the Nuggets bench, 70 to 43. And the last stat of the night. Biggest lead for either team. Spurs were once up by as many as 9. Denver was once up by as many as 12. At the end of the day, it just came down to the little intangibles. Who was executing, who capitalized on the mistakes. Denver did a better job. If we look at the play-by-play per quarter as far as the point totals go, first quarter Denver scored 32, San Antonio had 28. Second quarter Denver had 30, we had 37. We played better. Third quarter Denver had 27 points, San Antonio 24. The fourth quarter, and it was near the 3-minute mark of the fourth quarter where really this game got away. The Nuggets scored 43 points in the fourth. San Antonio had 37. Final score 132 to 136. 132 to 126. I'm sorry. So at the end of the day, it just came down to San Antonio just making mistakes. That's all it was. If they wouldn't have made as many mistakes and they would have just capitalized on the opportunities that they did have, they could have actually possibly won this game. I believe that they could have. But unfortunately, like we keep seeing in these two losses, it just comes down to inexperience. And then again, it's part of the growing pains, So the Spurs, they have another opponent coming up here. And I'm going to go ahead and look at the schedule so we can see. I believe the next opponent is going to be Utah. Yes, it is Utah. This is an early game at noon happening on Friday. Then after
Nooner.
Yep. Then after them, we play the New Orleans Pelicans. These are two pivotal games. The Spurs have to split in order to stay alive, or they're going to have to find a way to win both games to really make a push for the playoffs. But I just don't know what this team is going to do. Are they going to really show up and learn? Or are they going to keep making these little mistakes that keep them, from winning these tightly contested games? Thoughts on the upcoming game, Jonas? Do you think the Spurs have a chance to beat both not only Utah, but gain ground by beating Utah and also the New Orleans Pelicans?
I think we split it. And this just goes back to my original prediction when this whole season started. I think it's time, or when this whole Orlando thing started, it's time to get that back on track. I had us losing the first one to the Jazz. I also had tonight being our first loss. I figured we would drop 2 consecutively. The Jazz are just, again, a little bit better of a team. Donovan Mitchell likes to go off on us pretty well. Rudy Gobert, he's a walking double-double. So, I'm going to see that rebound edge go to them. I'm going to concede it right now. And that's going to be a lot of putbacks for Gobert, too. That's where he gets a lot of his points. But I think we really have a chance against New Orleans. We got to rain on and spoil Zion's debut back in, I think that was January of 2020, 30 years ago. But they're another team that's a little bit smaller, and we can contend with that. Zion, I think, is only 6'9", 6'8"-ish. He's not. He seems larger than life, but he's not a big man. Jackson Hayes is their big man, and I think he comes in around 6'11", and he's a little bit more wiry too. So I don't see him being able to body Jakob like Embiid could do and just shove him back. Even a slim Joker could kind of body Jakob a little bit. So I think we'll take the Pelicans game, and that one's going to just come down to a lot more, better coaching at that point, and just better personnel, because we're further along the road in our development process than they are. So 1-1 is my prediction there, Joe.
Okay, and what about you, Wesley? What do you think? Spurs are going to go ahead and split, or do you think they're going to go and get the win against Utah and also the New Orleans Pelicans?
Yeah, I want to see them go 2-0, but I just keep going back to that Philly game and thinking, what if? My God, we'd be 3-1 right now, sitting in good position, and then a split wouldn't mean as much. But unfortunately, they really need to go 2-0 in these next 2 games, and I agree with Jonas. They're going to go 1-1. The Jazz are just such a tough matchup for us. It stems with, a lot of what Jonas is talking about. Gobert is, he's a big man and a walking double-double, as Jonas had talked about, but he's a guy that you just don't score on in the paint. And the one thing that the Nuggets presented, and why I thought the Spurs had a good chance to win this game tonight, was they don't have that dominant, in the paint, block shot, can rebound at will kind of player. They're a little softer in the middle. Utah is not that. Utah, quite frankly, I believe is the best on ball and under the basket defensive team in the NBA. And why I still think that they're a dark horse to win the whole thing. Nobody talks about them, but they've got the young talent to just put the fear into any team, and if they get it right, they could go real far. I think the Spurs don't beat Utah. I think they do beat New Orleans. And again, to what we talked about earlier, it leads to that point. If you're still treading water and you're still theoretically into the playoff picture of sorts, are you changing your mindset, or are you going to go with the youth movement as we've talked about here? It's going to be a tough force and a tough choice here, but what did you bring Samanic and Metu to the arena to do? Did you bring them to be spectators, or did you bring them to be players? So I think if they go 1-1, it's very possible we might see them go ahead with the youth movement. Love to see them go 2-0. I just don't see it possible.
Definitely. John Tillman on joining us from YouTube says, "Hey Joe, I'm just gonna say it. I think Jakob is ass. Jakob needs some work. I'm not gonna lie. He needs some work, man. Jonas was saying, there's some frustrating things about him, but there's also some good things about Jakob. There's a lot of things that Jakob needs to work on in the offseason, and unfortunately, we don't know what's really going to happen since he's going to be entering free agency. If he works on those things and the Spurs can work things out and he comes back and looks better, hey man, I'm going to be all happy for it, because a well-rounded Jakob is going to pay dividends for the Spurs moving forward. So you always want your better players on the team to get that much needed work in the off season and come back that much more better for the next season. One of the things that I will tell you guys is I think the Spurs can in fact beat Utah if they play a really well-rounded game. It's going to take a complete effort as far as them playing great team defense, keeping those mistakes to a minimum, watch it with the turnovers, and if they beat you inside the paint because of their size, oh well, let them, but there's other things that you can do that work towards your strengths. If they play to their strengths, they have a chance. If they can keep it close in the fourth quarter, maybe within striking distance, 3 or 4 points, they have a really good an opportunity there to pull out a win. But if the game gets away from them quickly, that's my biggest fear. In the first quarter, they come out and they just come out flat, can't match the intensity, or Utah goes on a quick run and the Spurs go down by 20. I don't know if this team can come back from that against this Utah team. That would be a hole that's dug too deep for them. They're going to have to try to keep pace with Utah in order to get the win. While it is a tall task, I think that they can find a way to win. Now, against the New Orleans Pelicans, I like their chances against the Pelicans. It seems that the Pelicans at times are kind of babying Zion Williamson with those minutes, especially in the fourth quarter. If they go ahead and keep him out and he's not really in rhythm and not really a threat to us, we have to watch it with their youth, of course, but the Spurs can still match their speed and athleticism. So that game to me is interesting. I can see them easily remaining competitive and beating the New Orleans Pelicans. I just think the test for them is going to be this Utah Jazz team, but since they have these 2 losses in a row and they know that they're games that were winnable, maybe that's going to put a fire under their ass to play that much more better for the Utah Jazz, because let's just face it, these are competitors and every loss really hurts them. It really bothers them because they know that they were capable of playing so much more better than they actually did. So I think Pop is going to go ahead and maybe challenge them a bit. I hope he does. You all could have easily won these last 2 games. There's too many mistakes. We need to clean that up. If they play a better game, a cleaner game, they can probably remain competitive and probably beat anybody. But it's
the flip side to that, Joe, is though if they've lost these games in a row and they're scrambling, are you going to see more iso ball? Are you going to see more reverting back to things because they don't start having the trust in those youth? That's just my thought too, though, is that while the 2 games might light a fire, on the opposite side of things, are you going to get more of that reverting act of back to what's comfortable and trying to take over things when they shouldn't be doing it?
Yeah, Alexander Mesquita, he goes, there you go, Joe, bring out the rally towel. I love my Spurs, I always do, but I'm also critical of them. But I after what we've seen here in the bubble, and you've seen the influx of both the youth and the veterans together, this tells you a lot about this team, that they were capable of playing a lot better than we actually saw them in the regular season. Why they didn't go ahead and do this sooner, we just don't know. Because think about it: if they had played the younger players, like a Keldon, or given more run maybe to Lonnie, not in the beginning of the season, but gradually increased their minutes as the season went on, who knows what we could have done, But they brought them on when it was already near the NBA hiatus, which no one saw coming. Then they go on hiatus, they come back and they looked a lot better, they look fresher. I don't know. It's like there was something out there in the bubble that just made them look a lot better, especially in the scrimmage. You just like their energy. I don't know what it was, but the Spurs just came back as a different team, and I liked it. And I just want to see them keep on capitalizing on that and keep moving forward and growing. If they lose, yes, it's disappointing. We all hate losses. But at the end of the day, it's part of the growing process. I still believe this team can remain competitive, with this couple of games that they have left. It's going to be up to them to win these games, So it's interesting all around what's going to happen with this team. A lot of enigmas that we don't know yet. They're going to make for some great storylines, Jonas. So you got some things cooking over there already? You got the wheel spinning? What do you think, about this team as far as their intangibles? I mean, do you think if they play a really, really well-rounded game, a clean game, do you think they can beat any team out there in the bubble?
Ooh, any team? I don't know about any team. Because it still comes down to roster personnel and just how small our roster is compared to some of the other ones out there. Now we've got some size on the rise, in terms of like a Luka Šimanić, where he's on the roster, he's here, he's in a Spurs uniform, but he's just not quite ready yet. And you've still got that youth potential. Again, they're only 6'9", but your Chimezis and your Drew Eubanks, two other young guys who can definitely contribute. But more than a well-rounded game, I just need a complete game. Joe, if I give you $1, I expect 4 quarters back, and that's not. Right now I'm getting shortchanged by the Spurs. The first 2 games, where we went on our 2-0 win streak, right? Those were full games, and especially if you look at the third quarter, I think that we had an advantage. And if I can recall right, as I said, the other day I was listening to the Sixers broadcast, and as we were coming into the third quarter for the Sixers, they're like, the Spurs are a team you want to watch out for in the third quarter because they're coming on hot right now. They're outscoring opponents through their first 2 games. And the third quarter wasn't a strong suit for us last year. That's why we saw we had so much heartbreak where you watch the team come. We would play a pretty even first half. We would come out, we would lose the third quarter, and then we'd have to hustle and scrap and, get real gritty to try to pull out a win. And we'd get down to the couple minutes, and then we would lose. And you say, well, why did we lose? And it's, well, because you didn't play a complete game. So the first 2 games in the bubble, the Spurs did play a complete game. But then you look at these last 2, and the third quarter is where we lost it. Really we come out flat for whatever reason. It sucks to come out flat right out of the halftime. You should come out of that locker room motivated, with a good game plan that Pop just laid out for you. Hey, here's our approach. Get out there, make buckets. And let's go get this win. And we just fall apart. And then it goes back to, we revert back to where we have been then, where we do have the youth, we do have the personnel, we do have the skill, the ability, the everything to climb back into a game. And we did it the other night, and we did it today, where you make it really interesting in the end, where it really shouldn't be. And even put a team like the Nuggets on their heels, like you said, Joe, up until about 3 minutes to go, and that's where we start, keep missing a couple more shots. They go down and they make their shots, and you can't. At some point, you've got to just slam some home, to at least go basket for basket, and hope that they find their way off their rhythm. But we don't have the size personnel to be able to do that. And just get some easy dunks, and so you're trying to shoot your way back into it. And A shot is not as effective as just dropping it in the bucket. So, yeah, Joe, they can hang with just about anybody. Just about anybody. I wouldn't say anybody quite yet, but I like what I see for the future, and that's why I want to see more of it. Just going back to my original opinion when we started the show tonight, I want to see the young guys. And I don't want to see just young guys. So don't mistake me there. I don't want to sit DeMar and sit Rudy and hell even sit Jakob and sit Patty and just run the Austin Spurs from the last 3 years out there. That's not my.
I know that's a lie. I know you do, Jonas. Deep down, you want to
That's
see
not
it.
that's not my approach. That's not how I want to do this. But I want to see, especially if I have to consider making an investment that's not even in my hands on DeMar DeRozan. If DeMar decides to opt in, he opts in. Then you kind of maybe talk to him about a sign and trade if you really don't want him. But I want to see how he can run out there with some more of these guys. Give him some time a little bit more with Quindary Weatherspoon, and see if their game has any chemistry, if and at all. And like I said, go ahead, Pop, tinker. Is one of your favorite things to do because he does it because he's great at putting together rosters. So I'm not questioning Coach Pop's ability to put together this team, but I'm just saying don't chase the playoffs. You sold me on this idea of development over winning. I bought your idea of development over winning. Now give me my money's worth. I want to see actual development over winning. I want to see you run some more of the Austin Spurs guys out there, and see if Quindary Weatherspoon's going to be worth it. See if it's worth, holding on to Chimezie Metu. We can drop him at the end of the season, and he has one more year left in his contract, but it's non-guaranteed. So see if it's even worth paying him the 1.4 next year. See if Drew Eubanks, who actually, we're kind of seeing actually, is worth another look, at least on a 1 or 2 year deal. I like to see that a little bit more. But even get Luka out there and just see where he's at. He would put him against Rudy Gobert. He's going to get eaten alive. But I want to see how he responds, because we already see it going on in Spurs Twitter with his mentions about his patience tweet and how he might look checked out over on the bench and stuff like that, because he already knows he's not playing, and that's not what we want to see from a Spur, right? That's not a Spur quality to check out, even if you're not getting minutes. So let him get out there, and let's just see sort of where he's at, because we're seeing where everybody else is at. And he's going to be the longest one, and I've already pegged this. He was a project. He is raw, and he is still quite raw in terms of his potential for the Spurs moving forward. He's still adapting to this game, and you can go back to the scrimmages and see where he just looked lost at times. But he's only going to find his way if you let him go out there and walk around. And then put him out there with some good guides, like a Derek White, who can say, hey, get into position here. And Derek White is a real court general right now. I love what he's become in Orlando, and I really hope that he sees himself in this role flourishing and decides to continue to provide that for this team moving forward. Because he's one of the best communicators. He's obviously the best player on both ends of the court right now. And he just, the way he anticipates the game is mind-blowing. That's how he picks up the charges that he does, because he sees what's happening 2 steps, 3 steps ahead, and says, I'm going to plant my feet so this charge isn't even debatable. He's picking up fouls at a better rate too on the offensive side. He had a really key 3-point foul tonight where he was behind the line, didn't really have a shot, but he still put his body into it. And that's just understanding the game, and you'd like to see that from such a young guy. So get him out there with a Luka Šimanić and a Keldon Johnson just for comfort. because Comfort and Luka and Keldon played together in Austin, and so that's going to breed some familiarity. And even if Luka isn't having a great night, but he can be a part of Keldon's success, I think that's going to make him feel better, like he is part of the process. They both came in at first-round picks this last year, and even in the Growing Ground series, they call the Austin Spurs dubbed them the brothers. Because they are draft class brothers, with Luka being just a few minutes older than the actual older Keldon Johnson. So that's what I'd like to see. Can we contend? Yes, we can contend. Do we have the roster? Yes, we have the roster, but that should not be the focus right now.
I'm going to go ahead and answer a question here to one of our users. We're users out here. Tim Rodriguez. He had put, let me see, looking for it. Somebody had asked, he was talking to me about Luka. He has a Joe, serious question. Do you think coaching staff think Luka is ass? No, I don't think the coaching staff thinks Luka Samanic is ass. Actually, R.C. Buford handpicked him in the lottery. You know, he was really high on Luka. He said that he was available at that spot when the Spurs picked him, because he needed a lot of development. Actually, the coaching staff is really high on Luka Samanic. They see that his ceiling is high. They just know that he needs a lot of work, because we got to remember, too, he's coming from the EuroLeague, coming over here to the NBA. He has to get used to everything here. The game moves a lot faster. There's different rules. There's, just a different atmosphere here that he has to get used to. And he needs to bulk up a little bit. He's going to go up against guys who are a lot stronger than him, that can back him down. And these are things that he's going to have to work on, in the off season. But is he ass? No, not by a long shot. We all need to be patient with Luka, because I believe Luka is going to be a great player. We just have to wait for him to see how he develops. Oh, and shout out to you, Clint Proctor. He goes, Pinky's down for that fourth quarter. Yes, Clint, we know that, man, for sure, because we hate when the San Antonio Spurs lose a game that they could have easily won. They could have been in the mix, But it's
double Pinkies down for the third too.
That too, and the way they started the first quarter by going down so quickly, and having to climb back out of that hole. So that's not.
I'm already out of Pinkies.
Yeah, me and you both, man. But we're gonna go ahead and bring this episode of the Spurs Takeover to an end. But if you all come back and watch the next Spurs Takeover, I'm gonna be giving away some Spurs Coyote swag. I already gave a little care package to our winner the last time. Somebody had noticed my hat, and they were like, hey, we like your hat. So I sent them some love, and I sent them a Coyote sticker, and I sent them a Coyote pin here. So if you watch the next episode of the Spurs Takeover, and we're going to go ahead and give this out to let's say the person who's watching, and one of our fans that gives us the best comment of the night. If you have a comment that was just like so outstanding, we all commend you on it. We all liked it so much. We're going to go ahead and send you some Coyote swag. So make sure you go ahead and tune in and listen to us on the next episode, so we can go ahead and recap Spurs basketball. And we love engaging and talking with you guys. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much for all the support. We really, really appreciate it. So before we go ahead and bring this show to an end, Wesley, now that you came back from I don't know where, go ahead and tell us how we can engage with you on Twitter.
Yeah, at Wesley Perk. Sorry, I had to go take the ham out of the oven. It was beeping at me.
Oh.
So got to do the father things too,
okay.
right? So anyway, again, love talking sports and just all sorts of stuff, from music to just what's going on in the world's basketball. Of course, is the key right now. Major League Baseball for now. Hopefully it stays going, but soon enough, hopefully we'll get some kind of college football and some kind of Dallas Cowboys, and we'll forget about the whole Dak Prescott 1-year tag and just see the Cowboys rule and win a Super Bowl. Go Cowboys.
And Jonas, where can they engage with you on Twitter?
At Jark Clonus on Twitter, JARKCLONAS. I cover the Austin Spurs for Project Spurs, and obviously I've been putting it out there a little bit more. That new piece that I had come out, actually I've heard that it's been actually doing pretty well, so thank you to anybody who's already checked it out at Project Spurs. about how Austin has been the key for the Spurs puzzle, piecing back together this team since it collapsed and we lost a lot of pieces from 2016 to 2018. And we lost our centerpieces and how we're rebounding back. But if you're also interested in maybe what's coming out of Austin and some guys that should deserve consideration for two-way contracts next year, with Quindary no longer being, I'm assuming he's going to get a real contract somewhere, whether it's with the Spurs or another organization, and then same with Drew Eubanks, who's playing out of his mind right now. They will both be off their two-way contracts. So I've got three guys that I think that should all be considered eligible for or in consideration for that from the organization that are currently playing in Austin, so they already understand the system. They've already played with our young stars, and they're worth another shot. So you can check out that article at Project Spurs. Also, a little bit more on Drew Eubanks. Why I thought that back in February, looking at his season up to that point, how he figures in the Spurs' future moving forward, what kinds of decisions they have to make on him with his two-way contract running up. And even back in December, looking at a really key guy, and you'll notice him pop up throughout my articles if you read through all the material on Project Spurs. Dedrick Lawson, a blue chip product who came out of Memphis, went and played at Kansas. He's got all the accolades you could possibly hope for. I think short of a title in college basketball at that level. And he's currently playing for the Austin Spurs down in the G League, who, of course, their season is over right now. But he's one of those guys to kind of look out for. Another 6'9", but he provides a lot of floor space. And we like to see the blue blood that comes out in Keldon Johnson. Well, we have another one sitting in our organization right now that could deserve another look. So check out all those articles. You can interact with me. I do love having conversations with people on Twitter. Talking about the Austin Spurs because how they've been so instrumental, and you can already see it now. I've dropped the stat a couple times here, but when Bryn Forbes is out there on the court as well, 9 of the 16 players that are in Orlando right now all have ties back to the Austin Spurs, whether they're two-way players or just first or second round picks that went down and spent some time there. So it's been instrumental to getting this organization back to where they are right now.
And we'll make sure you go and follow Jark Colonis at Twitter, which is Jonas Clark. Frank Riojas, before we go ahead and end this, he has a question. He goes, all I have to say or ask, he goes, what the hell happened to the Spurs? They were bad ass in the first 2 games. Now they have gone back to their losing ways. What the hell? It's an experience, Frank. It happens, when you have the youth out there. And unfortunately, they're looking to develop, like they said, over winning. And this happens when you have inexperienced players out there on the court. While they give
also, really quick, we did see an uptick in the level of teams we're playing against too. We went up against, I think, the 5th seed that the Sixers are in the West, in the East. We went up against the top. Can't remember exactly where the Nuggets fit, but I think there's 3. Thank you, Wesley. Team in the West, and of course that's a large separation from Memphis and Sacramento.
And you cannot teach height. I'm sorry, you can't teach height. If you don't have tall people out on the court, you're not going to be as successful as you are if you have tall and athletic guys like they've been playing. So at some point, you're not going to be able to do that.
And the Spurs just have trouble with teams that have big men, and unfortunately, a lot of the upper echelon teams have really great big men at their disposal. Yeah. Big men who know how to pass the ball, high IQ, have mid-range jumpers, can shoot the ball, can shoot their free throws. That's why these teams are so good. Big men like that are in short supply. You can't just be tall and then have all these attributes. These are things that get developed over a period of time. That's why we have to be patient with the big men that we have. They can develop
guards,
as well.
Right. Guards are sexy. Right, everybody likes to see the flashy guard, the 30, 40 points a night. But as the Deuce, as we like to call him, said, board man gets paid, and the big man gets paid, and paid in the NBA in terms of championships. And that's why you see the better teams out there, like you said, Joe, are the ones that have the big guys up there towards the top. So even if they don't necessarily have the top 3 or 4 players in the NBA, the top two teams in the West are carried by the Clippers and the Lakers. With LeBron James and Kawhi. You look at the rest of the West and how that kind of plays out, and anybody who doesn't have a top three player in the NBA, they've got an upper echelon big man.
Yeah, and James Salinas says 3 straight by the Joker. Exactly, Silas. I mean, the Joker is just one of these, gifted big men. And they're in short supply. If you have one, and you build your team around him with the right attributes, they develop into really good teams that can really make a run in the playoffs. And even in the regular season.
It's a little off topic. It's a little off topic, Joe, but people didn't really get a chance to see Arvydas Sabonis in his prime when he was, really the best at this. And the Joker is like the reincarnated version of Arvydas Sabonis. His passing, his touch, the game comes to him. He doesn't force anything. That's the beauty of it. It's like, you saw him make all those 3-pointers and like he was covered. You saw him make a tough fall away jumper with, his legs out and falling backwards, and he's covered, and the ball is just silky smooth going through the hoop. I mean, the guy is unreal. That's Arvydas Sabonis, like when Arvydas was really dominant back in Russia. Just saying, that's one of those very rare combinations that you don't see ever, in just maybe once in every lifetime. That's it.
Yep, exactly. So if you all want to engage with me, you can check me out at 2 Shots Podcast, and I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Just look me up. It's at 2 Shots Podcast, TWOSHOTS Podcast. And also make sure you go ahead and check out all the great articles, all the great content that you over at our friends at ProjectSpurs.com. They go ahead and satisfy all your needs for all things Spurs, including Jonas Clark, who is a writer for Project Spurs. And we have a lot of other great and talented people who write for Project Spurs. So make sure you go ahead and check them out. So for Jonas Clark and Wesley Perkins, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you guys for watching another episode of the Spurs Takeover. Like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind,